That is a charge called homicide felony murder. It is life without parole.
So sorry. I wish it was me.
We're all aware that certain criminals disregard the outcomes of their actions. However, what unfolds when the repercussions of their wrongdoing finally come to fruition? Today, we'll delve into the intricate mechanisms of the justice system, where some of the most dangerous offenders confront their fates, and their responses will undoubtedly astonish you. Join us on this thrilling journey as we introduce you to 15 dangerous convicts and explore their reactions to their sentences. Are they genuinely contrite, or do you question the fairness of their punishments? We'll leave that judgment to you. Number 15. Cameron Herron. In 2018, Cameron, who was just 18 years old, was involved in a devastating accident with tragic consequences. The incident occurred on Bayshore Boulevard and resulted in the loss of his mother and young daughter. Cameron was accompanied by a friend who was driving a Nissan Altima on that fateful day in May, while Cameron himself was behind the wheel of a black Ford Mustang, a car he had received as a graduation gift. That morning, Jessica Reisinger Robinold, originally from Ohio but visiting relatives in Tampa, decided to take a walk. She was pushing her 21-month-old daughter Lelia in a stroller as they crossed the road near Knights Avenue when the tragedy unfolded. Cameron and his friend admitted their responsibility for the accident, leaving the judge to decide their sentences. Cameron deeply regretted his actions and understood the gravity of the situation. According to the state's guidelines, the minimum punishment for his crime was 18 years, but it could extend up to 30 years. Cameron's lawyer attempted to argue for a lesser sentence, but the judge ultimately handed down a 24-year sentence. In the end, he received 9 years for his mother's death, and an additional 15 years for the death of his young daughter. Cameron appeared shocked and fearful when the judge announced the decision. Though a mask partially concealed his face, his mother hugged him tightly and wept before the police took him into custody. Even after an appeal, a panel of 3 judges upheld the sentence, intending to use Cameron's case as a cautionary example to deter other reckless drivers from causing similar tragedies. Number 14. Tatiana Fusari. This is the tragic tale of Tatiana Fusari and her spouse, Seth Welsh. They were handed life sentences for the tragic demise of their 10-month-old infant, Mary Welch. At the time of this horrendous act, the couple resided in Kent County, Michigan. Mary Welch, a beloved and innocent baby, met her untimely end in August 2018 due to severe neglect, resulting in inadequate nourishment and hydration. Driven by their religious convictions and a deep mistrust of the medical system and government, the parents callously refused to seek medical assistance, despite being well aware of their baby's deteriorating health. Had they acted differently and sought medical care, they could have averted the infant's death. Tatiana Fusari openly admitted recognizing her baby's deteriorating health, but chose not to seek hospital care. This unfortunate incident was not the first time they had neglected their children's medical needs, all in the name of their strong religious beliefs. It was an unambiguous case of severe parental neglect. Mary's weight had plummeted to 8 pounds before her tragic passing. The autopsy incontrovertibly revealed that her cause of death was chronic malnutrition, which could only have resulted from prolonged neglect and deprivation of food and water. Subsequent investigations uncovered the squalid state of their home, infested with mold, vermin, and insects, rendering it wholly unsuitable for a family, let alone a child. While Tatiana Fusari later asserted that her husband had mistreated her and prevented her from seeking medical help for the baby, such claims did not absolve her of her actions regarding her daughter. During the trial, she received a life sentence for causing grave harm to a child, a felony charge. Additionally, the couple was handed an extra 15 to 30 years for the first-degree child abuse charge. Witnessing her reaction upon hearing this news is a poignant moment as she grapples with the dire consequences of her actions and the life she will spend behind bars, a just outcome given the gravity of their actions. Number 13. T.J. Lane. In 2012, a tragic event unfolded at a high school when a 17-year-old student named T.J. Lane committed a horrendous act by shooting 6 students. Unfortunately, 3 young lives were tragically lost. Reports showed that the shooter had a dispute with one of the victims. Lane used a .22 caliber handgun, which sadly his victims also had. 2 injured students were rushed to the hospital, with one suffering severe injuries that paralyzed them. Law enforcement took action and charged Lane with 3 counts of murder, 2 counts of attempted murder, and 1 count of assault. Due to his age, Lane was held in a specialized facility for young offenders, while authorities deliberated on whether he should be tried as an adult. This heartbreaking incident occurred as Lane waited for a bus to take him to an alternative school where he was supposed to attend classes. The 3 teenagers who died in this tragic shooting were Danny Parmenter, Russell King Jr., and Demetrius Hewlin. While some believed that Lane had lost control and couldn't handle the situation, the prosecutor in his case described him as a reprehensible individual for his actions. During his court appearances, Lane wore a blue shirt but later revealed a white t-shirt with the word "killer" on it. This left everyone stunned by his disturbing behavior. In March 2013, Lane pleaded guilty to all his crimes and was sentenced to life imprisonment for 3 counts, with no possibility of parole. Number 12. Trey Relford. In 2015, a tragic incident occurred in Lexington, Kentucky, which left the local Muslim community in profound grief. The day ended in sorrow for Salahuddin, a young pizza delivery person. This deeply affected the community because Salahuddin's father was a highly respected principal at a local Islamic academy. He was widely known and admired. Tragedy struck while Salahuddin was out on a pizza delivery. On that unfortunate day, he was assaulted and robbed by Trey Alexander Relford and his associates. The horrendous act sent shockwaves through the community. Subsequently, it was revealed that Relford had committed a hate crime. He was found guilty and sentenced to 31 years for his actions. Salahuddin, who dreamed of becoming a filmmaker, had his life tragically cut short. However, despite facing this immense tragedy, Salahuddin's father, Dr. Abdul Munim Sombat Jitmud, displayed remarkable compassion during the court proceedings. It was a profoundly emotional and sincere moment when he extended forgiveness to Relford on behalf of his son and himself. Dr. Jitmud explained that forgiveness is significant in Islam, representing a profound act of kindness and charity. The scene of forgiveness and reconciliation between Dr. Jitmud and Relford was profoundly moving. Tears streamed down their faces as they embraced each other. This symbolizes the incredible power of forgiveness and Relford's genuine remorse. This heartwarming display of compassion touched the hearts of many who witnessed it locally and online. The news of this extraordinary act of forgiveness spread widely. This earned admiration and respect from people all over the world. Number 11. Michelle Blair. Michelle Blair resided in Detroit alongside her 4 children. However, her pursuit of stable employment proved to be a persistent challenge. Despite receiving advice from people to seek work and consider returning to school, she disregarded their counsel and remained jobless. Regrettably, this decision ultimately led to her eviction from her home as she could not meet the rent payments. On March 24, 2015, she was served an eviction notice, and shortly after that, a crew arrived to remove her furniture. However, an astonishing discovery awaited them when they entered her residence. 2 of her children, Stephen Gage Barry and Stoney Blair, were mysteriously missing. The crew promptly contacted the authorities, initiating an urgent search for the missing children. To the profound shock and horror of everyone involved, the police eventually located the lifeless bodies of the 2 children hidden in a freezer inside Michelle Blair's apartment. The discovery was profoundly distressing. Michelle Blair was promptly arrested due to overwhelming evidence pointing to horrifying abuse, including beatings, burns, and murder of her own children. The grim truth of her actions was chilling and heart-wrenching. During the trial, Blair confessed to these unspeakable acts. She asserted that she had committed them to protect her youngest son from abuse. However, there was no substantiating evidence to support her claim. The prosecution argued that no indications of abuse on the youngest child were found, but Blair remained obstinate in her denial, inhabiting her own distorted version of reality. As a consequence of her heinous crimes, Blair received a life sentence without the possibility of parole. What truly astounded observers was Blair's lack of remorse. Throughout the trial, she showed no emotion, steadfastly refusing to acknowledge her responsibility. She went so far as to justify her actions. She surprisingly said that she would repeat them without regret. Blair's words stunned everyone, underscoring her profound detachment from the gravity of her crimes. Number 10. Diana Lovejoy. Divorce is incredibly challenging for any couple, regardless of the circumstances. Whether they are parting ways amicably or if one person strongly opposes it, issues like financial matters often arise, and sadly, children can become caught in the middle. It's a period filled with difficulty and intense emotions. However, one must question whether it's justifiable to consider ending one's partner's life. In the case of Diana Lovejoy, it appears that she believed such a drastic measure was necessary. Recently, she was found guilty of her involvement in a failed murder-for-hire plot against her husband. When the court announced the verdict, those present were shocked. Diana collapsed and fainted right there in the courtroom. Her accomplice, Walden K. McDavid, also received a guilty verdict for conspiring to commit murder. The judge had to clear the courtroom so Diana could receive immediate medical attention. They had to transport her out on a stretcher, and a paramedic noted her apparent state of complete shock. It's challenging to attribute all the blame to her, especially considering the severe consequences she was facing. The guilty verdict meant she would be sentenced to a minimum of 25 years to life in prison. Meanwhile, the individual who actually pulled the trigger, her firearms instructor, Weldon McDavid Jr., could potentially face an even longer prison sentence of 50 years to life. But what drove Diana to hire someone to harm her husband in the first place? According to a female juror, Diana didn't want to share custody of their son or pay him $120,000 in the divorce settlement. The situation overwhelmed her, leading to desperate measures. However, resorting to violence is never the solution. Resolving conflicts through legal means is always the preferable course of action. Number 9. Jordan Fuss. Driving while under the influence of alcohol is a hazardous and unacceptable action. It should never be considered, not even in emergencies. The case of Jordan Fuss, a 22-year-old Davie resident, is a stark example of the consequences of drunk driving. Jordan had consumed rum and made the ill-advised decision to operate his 2004 Infiniti G35 with a passenger. It was later revealed that the passenger had given him the drink, but that wasn't all. Upon further investigation, the examiners found marijuana was in his system. This incident occurred just before midnight during the early autumn of 2014. Fuss was driving at an excessive speed, exceeding 90 miles per hour, when he collided with another vehicle at the intersection of Davie on Sterling Road. Witnesses reported to the police that Fuss's car had swerved between lanes before the crash. They described a loud noise followed by Fuss's car soaring through the air and colliding with another vehicle approaching from the opposite direction. This collision also affected individuals at a nearby store. Two young men exited the car and continued without slowing down as they approached the intersection. In the struck vehicle, Nancy Saavedra was accompanied by her 14-year-old daughter and her 6-year-old son, Santiago Mondragon. Tragically, Santiago was pronounced dead at the scene, while Nancy and her daughter survived. Fuss faced charges of reckless driving, vehicular homicide, and DUI manslaughter. His blood alcohol level was 3 times the legal limit. During his court appearance 2017, Fuss displayed visible signs of fear, uncontrollable trembling, and was on the verge of tears. His lawyer sought to mitigate his sentence by emphasizing his profound remorse, but the judge ultimately sentenced him to 14 years in prison. Fuss cried throughout the proceedings, but no amount of regret could bring back the lost son or ease the pain endured by Nancy and her family. Number 8. Franklin Williams. Franklin Williams didn't grasp the importance of remaining quiet and allowing the adults to speak. However, the Cleveland trial judge knew how to deal with a criminal like him. The judge tried to ensure the trial ran smoothly, but Williams had different intentions. He continued talking despite multiple warnings from the judge. As a result, the judge became frustrated with Williams's arrogant behavior and took an unusual step. The judge instructed the deputies to place a piece of red tape over Franklin's mouth to prevent further interruptions in court. Williams was visibly unhappy with this method of silencing. He began shouting about freedom of speech, duct tape, and hashtags as the deputies escorted him out of the courtroom. The media heavily criticized Williams's reaction, deeming the judge's action as inhumane. The situation escalated to the point where the judge felt compelled to apologize for the questionable silencing method. The judge subsequently withdrew from the case. Ultimately, Williams was found guilty of 3 armed robberies related to the duct tape incident. He insisted, "I am not an animal. Contrary to what people may think, I am a human being." Unfortunately for him, the judge who had taped his mouth imposed a shorter prison sentence than the subsequent judge. Consequently, Williams is currently serving a 33-year prison term. Number 7. Danta Wright. Danta Wright's case stands out as one of the most unsettling reactions witnessed from a convicted individual. At the age of 17, Danta Wright committed a gruesome murder. He took the life of 18-year-old Jordan Clee from Ann Arbor. Jordan, a dedicated student at Pioneer High School, should have been attending classes. But unfortunately, he was tragically discovered shot dead in October 2016, not far from his home at Pine Lake Village Apartments. Jordan is a high school senior and an industrious student. He was a passionate football player who had his life cut short. Danta Wright was the accused murderer, and a pre-trial hearing was scheduled. However, he shocked everyone by confessing to the crime, displaying a complete lack of remorse during legal proceedings. Disturbingly, he appeared in court with a chilling smile on his face, even laughing at times. When Jordan's grieving family delivered a heart-wrenching statement about their beloved son, Danta's actions were marked by hostility. Given his abhorrent behavior, it might have seemed justifiable to proceed directly to trial and sentence him to life imprisonment. However, in July 2017, Danta received a sentence of 25 to 52 years in prison. While justice was served to some degree, Danta's sinister and unrepentant demeanor throughout the proceedings left a lasting impact on all those involved. Number 6. Dexter Johnson. A guy with a murky history named Dexter Johnson was accused of the most horrific of crimes. The court gave him the death penalty due to his involvement in the deaths of Maria Aparecki and another person. Dexter and his 4 juvenile accomplices kidnapped Maria, robbed her, and drove her to an undisclosed location. This is where Dexter murdered Maria, and he raped Maria. Dexter and his accomplices did not stop their heinous acts there. They went on a 25-day criminal spree, during which they robbed many businesses and ended up killing 5 people. Dexter's demeanor at his trial was expressionless, and he displayed almost no emotion. But when Dexter was given his punishment, he looked up with tight lips and tears in his eyes. He lost it when he saw his loved ones enter the courtroom to hear the sentencing and tossed a chair. To restore order to the court, the on-duty cops quickly attacked him. Some of Dexter's relatives fainted from the uproar, and others wept because they wanted Dexter's penalty reduced. While in court, District Judge Denise Collins felt compelled to console Maria Aparecki's parents, who had endured much pain because of Dexter. She made sure they were okay and comforted Maria's mom. Dexter's execution, scheduled for 2019, was delayed when a federal court intervened and he was assigned new counsel. Dexter's cruel acts brought unimaginable suffering to his victims' loved ones. The aftermath of the tragedy is still being felt. The judgment reached by the court brought about long overdue justice. Number 5. Ricky Hand. In courtrooms, it's not uncommon for criminals to react to their sentences with gestures like raising their hands or even throwing objects like chairs or podiums. However, in 2016, an extraordinary incident unfolded in a Springfield, Ohio courtroom that astonished everyone. The central figure in this incident was Ricky Hand, a 46-year-old man with a history of multiple armed robberies. Ricky had already committed around 30 robberies and was on parole when he committed another offense. His fate was sealed when he received a staggering 40-year prison sentence. The court's decision left him in disbelief. He repeatedly questioned the judge, seeking confirmation of his conviction. But what happened next was truly unexpected. In a surprising twist, Ricky reached under his arm and produced something startling. He began throwing feces and urine around. This act was incredibly shocking to everyone in the courtroom. Ricky appeared prepared for an adverse outcome and aimed to make a dramatic exit, leaving everyone in awe. Swiftly, court officials subdued Ricky and regained control of the situation. Subsequently, the sheriff's office investigated how such an incident could occur, especially since thorough searches should be conducted before anyone entered the courtroom. Unfortunately, it was evident that security measures were overlooked in this case. This incident is a stark reminder of the critical importance of stringent security protocols within courtrooms, emphasizing the need for comprehensive searches to prevent individuals from bringing harmful or disruptive items into legal proceedings. Following Ricky's astonishing act, authorities recognized the imperative to review and enhance their security measures for all future court proceedings. Number 4. Antonio Barbeau. At 14, Antonio Barbeau committed a horrifying act by attacking and taking his grandmother's life. He didn't do this alone. He did it with the help of his friend Nathan. Antonio wielded a hatchet to inflict harm upon the 78-year-old woman. Barbeau and his accomplice Nathan Papp were convicted by the court for the death of Barbara Olson in her Sheboygan, Wisconsin home. Barbara, unsuspecting, had welcomed her grandson and his friend into her home. While she momentarily turned her back to call Antonio's mother, he viciously struck her on the head with the hatchet. Overwhelmed by the gruesome act, Antonio rushed to the bathroom, and upon his return, he witnessed Pap assaulting the woman with a hammer. In 2013, Barbeau was sentenced to a minimum of 36 years in prison, with eligibility for parole when he reaches 50 years of age. Antonio attempted to deliver a statement of apology in court, but his tears overcame him, and he handed the statement to his attorney, who also struggled to contain their emotions while reading it. The judge deemed the punishment appropriate given the heinous nature of the crime. The court was aware that Barbeau had suffered a brain injury from an accident in 2009, leading to a cognitive disorder that played a role in his decision to commit the crime. However, his mental condition does not excuse the atrocious nature of the crime. Antonio's friend Pap claimed that Antonio had conceived the idea to rob and attack. When they realized Olson had died, fear gripped them, and they attempted to move her to the car, leaving a trail of blood in the house. Failing to place her in the car, they left her in the garage. Subsequently, they allegedly stole items such as a purse, money, and jewelry before fleeing in Olson's car. Number 3. Anthony Rodriguez. Recently turned 18 years old, Anthony Rodriguez found himself entangled in a troubling predicament owing to his involvement in potentially violent offenses while under probation. In March 2012, he engaged in deeply disturbing acts that would have enduring repercussions. This disturbing episode unfolded at Martin Luther King Jr. Park in Bakersfield. In a reprehensible turn of events, Anthony committed robbery, kidnapping, and assault against a deaf woman. Several months later, critical DNA evidence emerged linking him to this despicable crime. Consequently, in August of the same year, he was handed a guilty verdict. The account of events presented during the trial depicted a distressing sequence of occurrences. A woman was walking in the park when a strange man approached her. This strange man forcibly threw her to the ground and took her backpack. She desperately tried to retrieve her mother's laptop from the bag, but the man forcefully clutched her shirt and dragged her toward a restroom despite her repeated pleas to stop. After an agonizingly long duration, the man left, taking the backpack with him. Anthony remained silent throughout the trial, offering no defense for his reprehensible actions. However, on the final day when he received a sentence of 30 years to life, he unexpectedly erupted in anger, vehemently expressing his discontent with profanity-laden outbursts. And deeming the punishment unfair, authorities swiftly subdued him and removed him from the courtroom. Following the trial, Anthony's family expressed deep concern and believed the punishment to be overly severe. Anthony's mother, overwhelmed by sadness, questioned if something had gone awry. She refused to accept that her son deserved a 30-year prison sentence. Number 2. Roxana Sikorsky. Roxana Sikorsky's life took a dark turn when at the age of 15 in October 2014, a horrifying incident occurred. She abruptly woke up in the middle of the night and violently attacked her brother. This caused immense distress to her family. Her violent outburst didn't stop there, as she also attempted to harm her parents and other siblings, though thankfully she was unsuccessful in causing them harm. Roxana, then 17 years old in 2016, faced severe legal consequences, receiving a sentence of 10 to 20 years in prison. Before the sentencing, Roxana's mother implored the court to consider her adopted daughter's dire need for ongoing psychological assistance. She explained that Roxana was still fragile and vulnerable, and placing her in an adult prison would be detrimental. Roxana had been adopted by the Sikorsky from Poland at the age of 4, along with her 2 siblings, due to her early childhood experiences of abuse. She had a mental illness known as reactive attachment disorder, making it challenging for her to form emotional bonds with her caregivers. During the court proceedings, Roxana exhibited genuine remorse for the pain she had caused. The sorrowful teenager offered heartfelt apologies to her parents, expressing a commitment to self-improvement. Eventually, Roxana agreed to a plea deal. She admitted guilt for attempted murder while 6 other serious charges were dropped. Her boyfriend, who had influenced her actions, received a life sentence for 7 convictions. As Roxana's future remains uncertain, she will spend a significant portion of her youth behind bars, hoping to rehabilitate and rebuild her life upon release. Number 1. Nicholas Cruz. Nicholas Cruz, a teenager who entered a Parkland school with a firearm, initiated a tragic event resulting in the loss of 17 lives. This devastating occurrence profoundly shook the local community. The subsequent legal proceedings were laden with grief and disappointment for the victims' families. Despite their yearning for justice, a unanimous decision on whether Cruz should face the death penalty could not be reached by the jury. Consequently, he was ultimately sentenced to spend his life in prison, devoid of any possibility for parole. This verdict deepened the sorrow of the families, who believed that Cruz warranted the most severe punishment for his atrocious deeds. Broward's Circuit Judge Elizabeth Shearer bore the weight of delivering the mandated sentence, proclaiming that Cruz must serve a lifetime behind bars for each of the 17 counts to which he had pleaded guilty. She imposed a sentence of life imprisonment with a minimum of 20 years for 14 counts, while the remaining 3 carried a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Judge Shearer took measures to ensure that Cruz would not profit from his crimes, deducting funds from his prison account to cover all expenses. This preventative action served to prevent Cruz from benefiting financially from the suffering he had caused. Following the protracted trial, Cruz was transferred to the Florida Department of Corrections. The trial was marked by intense emotions, featuring 2 days of heart-wrenching testimonies from survivors and the victims' families. Throughout the trial, Cruz exhibited minimal emotion, clad in a red prison jumpsuit, glasses, and a mask. However, when a grieving mother confronted him about his apparent lack of emotion, he briefly removed his mask to reveal his face.